Hello, ladies and gents, and everyone else watching and listening. Welcome to the Capture Mike podcast, episode 4, brought to you by Europa Halo. Podcast bringing you more gossip than the EU sauna, where we bring you some of European Halo's finest faces onto mic for your listening pleasure. I'm your host, Joe Sketch, joined today by one of the elders of EU Halo, the wise man that will still give you the hands, Mr. Shystie, or Dave, however you want to call him. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing great, Joe. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
I'm so pumped, mate, as well. Like the knowledge that is just what I can just feel just in this call before we even start speaking about the EU Halo scene is massive. Just for a breakdown for those of you who haven't watched or listened to one of these podcasts before, or you're returning after a while, this is a podcast where I bring on some of European Halo's, as I said, finest faces, but it could be players, could be coaches, could be content creators, and we talk everything European Halo. We talk about their experiences, any sort of lands, competition, anything along those lines. And I guess the first question I always ask, Dave, when we first come onto here as well, is how did you first get into Halo?
How did I first get into it? It was. I mean, I've been playing since the very beginning, since literally day one CE. I knew that Halo was an upcoming game with a decent amount of hype behind it, the original Xbox's launch. At that point, I was already pretty big on gaming. I owned all the consoles going back a couple of generations. I wasn't one of these people that stick to one thing. I like to, either rotate them, or if the money was available, I own all of them and just play as many different titles as I could. I knew Halo CE was coming out and it had a bit of hype behind it. So what ended up swaying me in the end was the fact that it had co-op and campaign, and I loved having friends over from school to play co-op on the couch and whatever, especially with campaigns, because that was very rare at the time. It's still somewhat rare to have a full-fledged campaign that you can play there with your buddy on the couch and whatever. And on top of that, it had split screen multiplayer. I remember reading a Games Master magazine review. That they don't publish them anymore. It turned into the website like Games Radar, but at the time it was one of the biggest games magazines. And I was waiting anxiously for the review for that to come out to see if this game's actually going to be any good, because new console. Bungie hasn't really established themselves at that point. And I remember I think it was 98%, out of 100 in the magazine, which was just pretty much unheard of at the time. A game would have to be just an actual classic for it to get that. This wasn't like IGN where they just give out tens, weekly. A 98 from this kind of magazine is extremely rare, once a year type deal. So that really convinced me. Okay, I need to. I didn't have an Xbox at this point. I was like, okay, this looks like a really great thing. I'm really hyped for this. It has so many good features. It'd be great to play with my mates and whatever. So I ended up making a deal with with my mum at the time, to basically, because obviously you're gonna have to convince your parent to buy the thing, right? And the Xbox, I think the RRP was something like 400 quid back then, which is today's money is probably 650. It's a lot of money back then. So we had to kind of make a deal. There was a lot of saying no, 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 but kids just nag and nag and nag, and I was trying to be a businessman and kind of just trying to, I'll do X amount of chores for X amount of weeks, and I'll give up my pocket money entirely, and all this stuff, trying to just swindle my way into getting this purchase. Eventually it kind of, I saved up enough personally of my own money, and then she sort of was kind of caved in and gave me the rest. And we went after school one day to my local Curry's. And we got the Xbox. I think it was bundled with another pad and another control pad and Halo CE, and I think it was I forget the name of the game. It was one of those games where you I don't know, it's you drive boats or something, and you shoot each other. It's kind of an arena shooter but with boats, basically.
It's not Hydro Thunder, is it? Is that the ring about? That's a boat racing.
It could be. I can't. It's it's kind of old styly boats. But some were I don't know. That does ring a bell, that game, but I don't know if it was that one. It could be, it could be. But regardless, anyway. So yeah, that was basically my intro into Halo at that point. I knew it was coming. I knew it was going to be a big deal. And once the reviews came in and everything, I was sold.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can like little day, he just sort of like a piece of paper, like writing a contract out to his mum, going, well,
Oh
if
yeah,
I if I hoovered the lounge for 7 days, every for 4 weeks, then that's worth X amount of money or whatever.
yeah.
Just trying to be a
Yep, yep,
businessman at least as well.
exactly, exactly. Like in my mind, I was thinking just okay, I get X amount of money, like pocket money or whatever. If I do X amount of like chores or whatever, or any other way I can earn money, I can add it up like incrementally, like over the weeks, over the months,
Mm.
and whatever, and just like kind of sacrifice my future work to kind of secure the secure the console, because it was a lot of money, and in hindsight, like that, it was actually crazy that it actually
Mm.
worked because I come from just a single parent. We grew up quite relatively poor, council houses and all that. It for me to actually I guess I was really blessed at that point. Kind of the stars just
Mm.
aligned to be able to have get that purchase.
When you brought the game home as well, and especially like back in the day, like you just load the disc in and get them play straight away.
Yeah.
Was it the case of right, mates coming over straight away, we're gonna get some campaign going or some multiplayer going?
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think the plan was I had a mate from school. He was going to go home, get changed or whatever, and then he was going to just like come over like immediately when I got. So by the time I got back from the store with it in my hands, then like we're ready to go. We're playing as late as possible and doing that until we complete it, and then we'll switch to multiplayer, split screen, and all that good stuff.
Was that like was there like a little scene almost when the multiplayer started to pick up? Were you straight into trying to be the best in? I guess it started in your school or in your local area between your mates and that sort of thing, or did it sort of just progress over time where you just started to play it just like casually and then suddenly just end up getting to that point?
Um, not really. Like initially in like CE, I didn't take the multiplayer side of things that serious, that competitive. It was just a laugh. It was more like you do like social custom games with your mates, that kind of thing. You don't. I mean, we're not sweating it out. Like in split
Yeah,
screen or whatever. We're
poor
just
lads.
like we're just screwing around. Messing with the physics, messing with the different with the vehicles, all these kind of things. Just having fun because at that point this kind of experience on a console is very very new. Halo CE, they say how it revolutionized FPSs on console, and it did. Before that, I mean, you kind of had like GoldenEye, but GoldenEye had some of that aspect as well with the split screen, with the arena sort of style, but Halo was different. Like CE was just so it was just something different, and you could just tell. You could just tell.
Yeah, I would have been like in my scenario, I was the mate going to play Halo CE because I never had it. I never had the original Halo CE when it came out as well. So I was always going to go around my friend's house to play it. And whereas you were like the facilitator, you had the Xbox. It was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
everybody's going to Dave's house tonight. We're gonna play
Exactly.
Halo till 2 a.m. It's Friday. That sort of thing as well. Is there anything which like stands out in your memory, like a really fond memory of that time playing Halo CE?
Um, Not, I don't know. It's kind of a blur to be honest, because it's so long ago. But a lot of it is just it's actually more co-op than it is like split screen, like competitive multiplayer than it was just the freedom, because of the way CE's campaign was. It wasn't like extremely linear where you like, it's just a corridor and you go to the end of the corridor and then that's it. It's very like it was far more open, like like how like the silent cartographer, like the maps like that, where it's like they're just wide. You can go and drive wherever. But there's an objective, but it's not like you have to go in a straight line to the objective. You can like check out the whole island. You can drive in the sea. I remember in CE you could just like drive in the sea basically forever outwards, and it would duplicate the textures and whatever of the sea, but it would make you like look as if you're just driving forever. The same thing when you would fly a Banshee like vertically, in campaign, it would kind of give you the sensation as if there's that you're flying forever vertically upwards, as if there's no limit. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that sort of feeling of freedom in the map, of like you don't know actually what's hidden, what kind of little Easter eggs are about, what's actually up here, what's all that sort of hidden potential. That's where like kind of my initial CE memories were.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Because I think a lot of people who got into Halo, be it Halo 3 or Halo 2, or even like some of the newer games like Reach or 5, a lot of them came from like a campaign background to start off with, and that's how they wanted to play originally. I think most people want to play the campaign to start off with, then the competitive comes into it
Hmm.
afterwards. Was it as soon as you got Halo CE, that's it, that's the only game I'm playing, that's what that's what majority of my video game time is going to go into?
Not initially. I mean, it took up a lot of the time, but at that point, it hadn't like converted me fully into just being lasered on Halo. It was a great game. I was having a lot of fun with it, a lot of replayability, and if mates came around, it was definitely one of the favorites that are getting played, just because of how versatile it is with all the options and everything. Um, what ended up happening was from that point, I continued I continued playing, like messing around with C a little bit. Um, and then, well, two things kind of changed the kind of the landscape from there for me. Were the first was the release of Halo C on PC, which they brought like new maps and like new weapons like the flamethrower and stuff like that. But more importantly, that had online support. You could play if you had a PC at that point, which I did for school. It wasn't a great PC, but it could run CE. It brought it kind of exposed you to that whole online competitive world for the first time. I mean, CE online wasn't great. Like it was not like when I played CE online, it wasn't like I thought in terms of like competitive nature and things like that, because it was very rough around the edges. Like you'd have just there was no lag compensation. There was like no, the hit rate was abysmal and all this kind of thing, right? So you don't take it seriously in that regard. It's just a funny sort of gimmick at that point. It's like all these people running around and all this stuff's going on. But it's a lot of fun, but it's just like the competitive nature is just not there because it's not hasn't got that consistency,
Mm.
And then on top of that, on the console side, Xbox Connect came around, which I'm not sure if you even know what that is. But that
Was that the
that
original Xbox Live, right? Sort
that
of.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
the precursor to Xbox Live, but it wasn't made by Microsoft. It was made by like the community essentially. You like hooked up it's like a FTP sort of setup towards your Xbox from your PC, and you'd like bridge the connections, and then it would essentially give you an Xbox Live like experience, but extremely basic and ridiculously laggy.
I was gonna say, surely the connection was gonna be like,
Yeah, it was.
pixels. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, again, like if you're not looking at it in terms of competitive nature, and you're looking at it in terms of just outright fun and outright, oh my God, this is online gaming. Like before Xbox Live, before you've really experienced PC online gaming. This was, you could see the potential. You could see like,
Mm.
as rough around the edges as this is, like once this is shined up, like this is going to be a diamond, like 100%.
Did you know about any of the like esports or the early sort of fledgling esports in America whilst you were playing online?
Yes.
Like,
Yep.
yeah, tell me
Yeah.
about
Yeah. I even like prior to Halo 2, when Xbox Connect came about, there was kind of always whispers around like the ogres and how they were sort of like the most the best players in the world, and they've got this pedigree behind them even at that point, tournaments won and
that.
so on. And then you'd have these other sort of players as well who are, also, well known. Your Killer Ns, your Clockworks, your players like that. Um, and even from time to time, you'd match them on Xbox Connect. If
Oh,
you were willing to go a step on a NA server, which even an EU server on Xbox Connect is a crime scene because of the lag. But when you step in on an NA server, like, and against that quality of player, it's not a fun time, you
No,
know.
no, I can imagine.
But you could see like I like I said, I matched those guys a few times. I played them here and there. Those sort of high up pro, I guess pro in their day players like pro and CE as far as NA tournaments went. And yeah, the you could just see like wow, these guys are actually like incredible. And it kind of it leads you on. It like it gets your attention as far as like oh wow they're incredible players, but then it kind of asks you the question of like how are they that good? Like how what like how have they gone from sort of like just an average player or whatever or an average person to being this good at this game? Like I don't like I need to understand the process of making it to that level. That's kind of initially kind of what got the hook in my mouth, you know?
Yeah, and just like that brings back so much nostalgia. You talk about like Strange Purple or
Yep.
Tupac or the Ogres, even
Yeah.
Walshy, Zios, all
Yes.
of these guys, like almost
Yep.
like pioneers, I guess, in a way of the early Halo esports side of
Absolutely. Yeah.
things. You
Yeah.
talked about like obviously that sort of in some ways inspired you to maybe even like look into how they did it, how you could improve your gameplay as well. What was the transition then into Halo 2 or into trying to get maybe competitive or better at the game?
Well, that was kind of my thinking. It was I saw how good these guys were, and it was I was like kind of blown away, and I always felt like I was pretty good at Halo, like in terms of like split screening with your mates. I mean, I guess everyone does because the small sample size, right?
Yeah.
But it was like okay, well, I mean, you can't really compete. I mean, you can't well, not compete. I mean, there's no avenues to compete at that point, really, unless you're an NA and you happen to be in these cities. But there was kind of a feeling of like, you know, Xbox Live is coming, um, and Halo 2 is it's not too far away at this point. Let's just see what happens. Like, because nothing's for sure, like nothing's certain or anything. Like esports doesn't really exist at this point, especially on console. I mean, I know on PC it does, but on console, it's it's there's nothing really there. There's nothing to compete in, so it's just more of a like a pride thing at that point. So it was just from that point leading into H2, it was just purely like let's see where this goes. But I'm definitely interested. Like this is definitely my kind of there's something here that's got me hooked really bad, and I'm curious to see where it goes. You know.
Yeah. So Halo 2 comes out.
Yep.
What's Dave thinking? What's going straight through as soon as it came out in your mind?
um, I was like I fell in love with Halo 2 very very quickly. I thought I honestly I think even today I still think it's the greatest Halo ever released.
I agree.
It was so groundbreaking and it was such a leap from Halo 1 to Halo 2. The amount of that they did in I don't know what the dev time exactly was, but I think obviously like CE was 2001, H2 was 2004. I don't know if they started H2 prior to CE, but it was talking like a 3-year dev cycle, maybe three, four, maybe four. Um, and the amount that they achieved in that window was just incredible. Like these were, it's not that they've added just new features and they copied them from other games. They like actually just revolutionized the entire genre. They were adding features and like you know just ideas into their game that had like just are just not like the standard. You know what I mean? Like they're not
Mm.
looking at other games and like okay, well we need to kind of like yeah we should steal that or we can do that better. I mean there was an essence of that of course, but it was like there was another level on top where it's like okay we're gonna make this like a game that's 10 years in the future essentially, the game that people are going to be playing in 10 years time, but we're going to bring it to them now. The from the Xbox Live like integration, um just to the like all the friends lists and the clans and all that sort of thing, the leaderboards online, the stat tracking on Bungie.net, all of this stuff. Then it goes even deeper than that. It just it blew my mind at that point, and I was honestly I was playing that game unhealthy amounts. I was going to bed at 4 a.m. Routinely, and getting up like probably like 7 for school, and then repeating it like just on for weeks at a time.
understandable, right? Yeah, like
Yeah.
surely
Oh, of
Halo
course.
2.
Yeah.
Halo
Yeah.
2. There's actually like a video documentary on how they created Halo 2. They started it after CE. Um, and like there's like a 45-minute video. I think you can even find it on YouTube of how they developed it, and it's so awesome. Like just to piggyback on what you're saying and how they, in such a small amount of time, they crunched down and made this like epic game, even though they cut some of the content from it as well.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so you're saying you're playing it all this time, right? Was there rumors of like an EU scene at this point, an EU Halo scene, or was it still just online looking at all the forums and tracking the NA stuff?
Um, my mindset was firmly on NA. I did not know that the European scene even existed until very late in Halo 2's life cycle. Um, it was about halfway through Halo 2 that I was aware that there was um, a European scene, and at that, and there was kind of like, I mean, people would say, okay, yeah, there's a European scene or whatever, but it's a bit of a joke. It's not really
Mm,
taken seriously. Um, it's just like it's technically a different scene, but it's like you don't really want to like go there. You don't really want to pay attention to that because it's just the level is quite low. That's general. I'm not saying that's what the general like sort of consensus that you would hear
yeah.
from like the upper American sort of scene. Which I mean, it was correct. It was correct to a certain extent. There were good players from EU, of course, but the foundation there and the actual player base and the pool, the quality of the pool of players was so much smaller compared to NA. So I was just focused on hanging around the NA players. I was very much in the NA bubble, and I didn't really care about like ping or anything like that or time zones. I would stay up very early to play with those guys. On their time locally. I'd always play on their servers or whatever. So I'm technically at a disadvantage, but in
Mm,
my mind, I'm thinking I'm kind of, I'm playing with weights on essentially at that point. I'm at a disadvantage. But if I can get to the point where I'm still doing as well as these guys, or if I get to the point where I'm actually a little bit better than these guys on their servers, then by the time you actually take these weights off and a LAN event comes, or we're actually on
mm.
even footing on servers, then the gap is going to be enormous. You know, so I didn't really have a problem with that. I was having a great time with that scene. It was there was so much like growth potential, and there were so many good characters in the scene as well. So I was having a great time on the NA side of things.
Who were your like idols in the NA side of things? Like who you looking up to when you were trying to get to that level yourself from the NA side of the competition?
Um, I would say I don't know. I mean the ogres, of course, just their
Yeah,
reputation
of
kind of
course.
spoke for themselves, and I actually like because I had a few interactions with the ogres in Halo 2, whether it would be like they would let you play custom games with them, let you play eights with them, or things like that. They were actually really kind. Same for Walshy as well, and Strong Side. Like they would do these things. Sometimes like you get players, especially back then, and it was a case of like if you didn't know them, you're getting kicked immediately. You're out the door. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Even if you're like kind of good or whatever, or if you're pretty decent and like you got like a little bit of a rep, they would still like not out the door. Like we're only playing with this bubble and this bubble alone. But those guys like they open the door like kind of a few times, and I appreciate that. I got to play with those guys and other high up players. Quite a few times over the years, I guess, where they just they have customs running or whatever, and or FFAs, and they'll just if you can get in, like if you've got a mate that's in there or whatever, they were cool with you, like they didn't have this like giant ego or this sort of
mm.
god complex where they're like, okay, well, we're not playing with anyone lesser than us, or if you're not in our clique, then bye. They weren't really like that. So that was kind of my first impression of them, and that sort of like really gave me like, okay, this is they've earned my respect off of that as well, because on the flip side, you get a lot of players that are, under the ogres in terms of, what they've accomplished, how good they are, but their ego is just immense, like they don't want anything to do with you. They don't care, who you are or anything like that, or how good you are. You could be better than them, but they will still just, they're so, I don't know, they're so like intent, like, they're so just about that bubble that, they're just any outsiders, like, no, bye.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever watched this as well, and it sort of backs up what you're saying with the ogres and Walsh and strong side, and why I guess also why they've sort of lasted the as long as they have in terms of like in people's minds and maybe even outside of they competed, they go into content and or casting or stay in the Halo scene. Obviously, Walshy announced or is still casting now, uh, but there was these MLG like videos like the MLG recap. I think they were like recap videos, which used to be on MLG TV back in like the Halo 2 days, and it carried on to Halo 3, etc. Where it was like 45-minute of the most recent event, and you'll like sort of get the breakdowns of different like the winners finals and the losers finals, and how how FBI the agency got to top 6, or how Storm Ventures placed top
Hmm.
2. Did you ever see any of those things, like anything like that from the scene, or was it just purely I'm
In
playing with these guys, I'm going in as much as possible?
not there wasn't really that side of thing. That was very commercial. That came later with Halo 3. In Halo 2, it was a lot more grassroots, bare bones sort of thing. It was very much word of mouth, very much like a friend of a friend sort of thing. And if you can, if you can get your way into a sort of bubble that's not necessarily in the same bubble that's in the pro players or whatever, but it might have links into them. If you just, you might be able to like network your way into them, and then usually what happens then is there's just a general sort of like almost like just a news feed inside that bubble that like everyone knows. Like if like, okay, I don't know, Wolshi can't play at the next event or whatever, and and the ogres are looking for a fourth, that just spreads like wildfire through that bubble. Do you know what I mean? Like instantly, by the end of the day, everyone in this bubble just knows it. There was no like sort of real, um, yeah, there's not a real great of like a great deal of like promotion of that stuff. I mean, there were like, obviously there's like montages and there's some forum activity and whatever, but a lot of it was just enclosed in the actual networking of your social status. Do you know what I mean? Like that was where it was contained.
Yeah, I love that side of thing as well though. Like it's all like passed down to yourself from different people, and everybody's like as soon as someone starts talking about it, 50 people start talking about it as well, and that's how you just get your information because. And I know what you mean. Like, you might know someone who's good mates with Walshy, so you can get into the pro side of things through him, or hear all of the pro rumors and stuff through that guy who knows Walshy, or that guy who knows T squared or whoever it would be in the Halo 2 days. You talked about like wanting to like if there's ever a LAN that you'd be on like equal footing against these guys in your weights would be lifted. Was there any thought for you to go into an EU LAN or in Halo 2 or to go in across the
Yeah,
NA?
yeah, absolutely. So this is, yeah. I mean, okay, so they the initial when this sort of the initial plan was to go to NA to compete. I when we talk about these like social bubbles and whatever, I was in a pretty good social bubble, although obviously at the time you don't really, I guess you don't appreciate who you're brushing shoulders with until you look back and then you see what they're going to do. Um, but at the time, I was playing with like really good players. Like they weren't pros yet. They were like myself. They were up and comers. Some more. Some had a bit more pedigree about them. Some had less. But we're talking like names like Ares, for example. Like
Yeah,
he's
Eric's
still,
carries.
yeah, Ares, Gunshot. Me and myself and Gunshot, really close friends back then. We spent like an immense amount of time playing together. Who else? We had like Best Man as well. He was always floating around. Eli the Ninja. Um,
Coach for
y-
G1 now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Even Snipe Down as well. Snipe Down. Prior to him competing at any LAN, he came up through like pretty much the same channel that I was like floating about. He there was a small pit, like a small time where I think it was like myself, Snipe Down, Gunshot, and Ares were even like a little matchmaking squad, where we were just running games in fours. Like we weren't like we weren't an actual team or anything, but it was just like a little matchmaking, like because we all played a lot. We would just all like group up and just try to. Just try to get the you get your ranks up because obviously ranks were more competitive back then. They actually
Mm.
felt like they meant something. Do
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that was the kind of bubble, and the idea was like me and Gunshot were trying to work something out where it would be like me, him, and two others like around this sort of caliber of player. They're not we're not pro, like they're not pro players yet. Like none of these guys really. They're just up and coming guys with like a lot of potential. They're obviously really good. Um, and they're planning to go to the scene, but I'm stuck in the UK.
Mm.
And there's not like you look at the price of the flights or whatever, and it's crazy. It's just there's no way I can self fund, like absolutely no way. Um, you look at we tried to reach not them, but I tried to reach out to anyone that I could like potential. Not necessarily orgs or sponsors. It was more sponsors back then because they weren't like really like esports orgs. You know what I mean? It was more of a
Yeah.
sponsorship. You try get someone on board, and and you try hopefully if they see enough potential in you they do it. Nothing it was a hard sell, and nothing just could ever come of it. So those guys would end up obviously going. I think I'm not sure if Snipe Down teamed with Gunshot for their first LAN or if it was their second LAN. I can't remember which. At some point they teamed. I think it was on Anti-Gravity was the team name. I might be mistaken on that, but yeah, I mean they teamed. They went to the event. They did. This was a little bit after I was trying to get funding. At that point, there was a kind of a moment where I just kind of had to accept, okay, I'm not going.
Yeah.
Like it's not possible. But anyway, eventually they kind of got a squad together. They went. They did pretty well. I forget exactly how well. I think they got like top 16. But this was back when like top 16 like was the competition was so stacked that the top 16 was considered like quote semi-pro. Like
Yeah.
you're still amongst like really good players. If you're losing at like that bracket stage, you're still losing to really high caliber players. It's just that from top to bottom the entire bracket is stacked. Um, but yeah, I mean from then on, obviously those guys, they did what they did. The rest is kind of history, and there was always just a unfortunate sort of I couldn't get out there to kind of see what I could have done at the time, even though I was obviously on that level as well, like floating among those guys in terms of being skill wise at least anyway. There's
Mm.
a lot more moving parts to being an actual great team than just individual skill, but the potential was there, and unfortunately it just never came to fruition.
Would you? I mean, obviously, being on the cusp of NA, especially during this time, is where you want to be. But did you ever consider any EU lands? Was there any around that you knew of at the
Yeah,
time?
yeah. Towards the very end of Halo 2, I actually kind of I was still playing. I just loved the game. I was still playing. It wasn't like, oh, I can't go to NA to compete, I'm just gonna give it up. It was very much like I'm still trying to get better. I'm still trying to, I'm still like I love this game. I'm putting so much time into it, and I'm having a great time. Like I'm making so many like good friends online as well. Um, so I slowly kind of drifted into the EU scene a little bit more. I think the first experience I actually had was I entered an FFA of a company. I think it would have been similar to like a Europa of back then. They were like a little
Okay.
European thing, and they were doing like an FFA, and I entered that. Um, and I ended up winning that, but it wasn't a strict MLG sort of setting environment. It was a bit of one of those strange ones where it's kind of like a hybrid of like casual and competitive. So they'll like do like I think it was like BR starts, but then they would like rotate the maps even on non-competitive maps. So you'd have like maps like Gemini and stuff being played for free for all in Halo 2, which is just a bit strange, but I'd end up winning that. And Lethal was in that as well. Who like UK Lethal, like Harry. he was in that, and I think he got second, and that kind of that kind of I don't know, that kind of just drew me more towards the EU scene a little bit more. It kind of just made me like poke my head up and be like, oh, okay, so what are you guys doing? Is it is it as bad as people say, or like is there anything actually here? Like what's going on? Because as far as I'm aware at this point, like nothing. I don't see anything. Like I don't know if there's like
Mm.
actual team. Well, I imagine there's teams, but I don't know if they're actually if there's a lot, if they're any good, if if there's events. Like I haven't heard of any of this stuff at this point. Um, so I would, yeah, I would kind of slowly move into that scene, but I would be a bit of an outsider. People would, I think, I don't know, people would, they kind of knew of me. That was the strange thing. It was like they knew of me, but I didn't know of them. As I went,
Mm.
like I kind of went into them. They sort of saw me as the guy that played with like the American pros and all this kind of thing. Um, so I kind of went to them, and it was, I don't know, there was a sort of a strange like sort of standoffish, well at least that's what I was feeling. It was like a standoffish sort of vibe from them, like they didn't want to, I don't know, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Like they didn't want to fully greet me or whatever, do you know what I mean, and like just
Mm.
welcome me fully. That's what it felt like. I'm not saying that for everyone in the scene, of course not, but like a lot of players were like that. They felt like standoffish. They're like, like you're not one of us sort of thing, just because I went and played with the NA. I was more from the NA scene despite being um you know European.
Yeah.
So, eventually, time would go on, and we'd play FFAs online, whatever. I'd do pretty well in the FFAs. Eventually, people would kind of hit me with a moniker of being an FFA kid, as in, as in I wasn't very good at fours, even though, I cut my teeth in fours in the NA scene. I was extremely experienced there, but I didn't have a team in European in the EU scene, and it was like difficult to convince other European good players to, I guess, team. Because of
Yeah.
because of the nature I described. So I was trying to that was my goal. Like in my mind, it was like I was going to do really good in the FFAs, which I did pretty. I was beating everyone there was to beat. LA ones, your lethals, and your so on, your Heaven's Wraths, and all these good FFA players. Um, and they beat me, of course. Just I wasn't like smoking these guys like they beat me
Dominate
too. It
everything.
was, but it was like if you're gonna have to beat them, as much as they beat you, then you obviously you can't be
Yeah.
too bad. Um, Eventually, I was like, okay, right, screw it. I'm just gonna get like a team that's more like it's not gonna be the best team in the world in Europe. It's not gonna. I'm just gonna get like I've made some from some like half friends in the scene in Europe, so I'm going to team with them and see how it goes. We're going to go to this upcoming event. I think it was in Birmingham, and I'll try and make a name for myself. I'll try to show these guys, okay, you should be picking me up. You should be playing with me. This is what I can do, sort of thing, right?
Mm.
Um,
Is this
what
your
would happen?
first LAN? Is this your first LAN you went
Well,
to? This Birmingham one.
no, no, I'll get to that. This
Okay.
is so. What happened next was we had a pre-LAN at Addy Hash's house. I'm not sure if you know who Addy Hash is, but he's an old head as well. He hasn't played for a long, long time, but he was hosting a pre-LAN for the actual LAN at his house. I think he invited 4 teams. Our team was going to be one of them, and I went to that. It was like a 3-day thing, and it was a thing. It was very much like you'd have to pull up with your own your own CRT TV in your hand as well, like through the front door. Everyone's bringing their own CRT TV, like the big bulky ones back then. You
Massive
know what I mean?
setup as well. Just
Yeah, yeah.
the
Like I'm,
trolleys
I'm
almost like.
exactly like everyone is bringing one of those because we need the setup, and then the Xboxes and the system link and all that stuff. Um, so I go there and I do that, and um, it was gonna be like a 3-day thing. I think it was like we go there Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then we leave on Monday, something like that. It was like I forget exactly who was there, but it was I think Harry was there, Lethal, maybe Miles, Heaven's Wrath, and a few like Grips I think was there too. So some good teams, some good players. After the first day, I got a call that I think it was from my mum well, yeah, it was from my mum at the time, and her boyfriend died suddenly,
Oh,
and so basically, yeah, I just left. I just left the land. Like I kept them, left them my TV or whatever. And I left it with them. And I just went home and kind of just was a bit mentally sort of shell shocked from that because of how sudden it was and how just out of place it was. Like the timing wasn't great because I was at this thing and in my mind I was just kind of like, I need to kind of impress. I need to make a name for myself. Like I'm trying to, I need to get this team like really good so we do well at the event. You kind of like locked in that zone, and then you just get a call out of nowhere of like some pretty tragic news.
yeah,
And so I go, so yeah, I leave. I end up leaving on the second day, and I end up calling off the LAN, which I think the LAN was like 2 weeks later, something like that. And I'm like, sorry boys, like, I just can't I can't do it. Like mentally, I'm not in the right place. I had other stuff mentally going on as well at the time, as far as just general anxiety from school and that kind of thing going on separately from Halo. So like this on top of that, just kind of like I'm just not with it. I'm just like, sorry guys, I'm gonna need to just cancel this. And from that point, I didn't really get back into Halo 2. I kind of just stayed away. Um, Halo 3 was not too far away. I think it was under a year away. But at that point, I was just like, I'm just gonna take a break from gaming in general,
yeah,
especially Halo, just because of obviously the stress and the focus that's required. Uh, but that was supposed to be my first event. Unfortunately, it fell through. Um, so I'd have
yeah.
to wait quite a while longer until that my first actually came.
But understandable, man. Like, yeah, mental health and personal stuff is always more important. Um, and and I'm sure everybody there would completely appreciate it, that
Yeah, no, they were
decision as
they were
well.
exactly they were completely cool. It's not like I pissed anyone off or anyone
Yeah,
was, even my teammates were like, it sucks, but it is what it is. Like it's, if you're ever gonna have an excuse, that's a pretty good one. So
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I guess like you still made your name, even if you were just an FFA kid. I'm sure, like when you first came into the NA scene as well, like everybody in like these little like maybe in their own chats or in their talking to each other, like, oh, that's the NA guy, that's the guy who plays with Snipe Down, or that's the guy who plays with, he's played with ogres, he has, and that sort of thing as
yeah,
well.
there was that, and there was a that like we did some things on. I was very active on the old Halo 2 forum back in the day, which would go on to like be the Halo 3 forum and so
Yeah.
on. Um, we did like a thing on there, like myself and Gunshot, where we would like essentially do a twos challenge where uh we would challenge anyone in the scene to like twos to try and beat us basically because we were kind of cracked out at twos at that point. And we'd go on this like massive streak, and then eventually like some pro players started getting involved, and we'd go undefeated against them. Not like high caliber pros, more like lower tier pros, sort of, still like top 16, top
Mm.
12 sort of caliber, but we do well against them. But that a lot of that and the interactions that happened with that in that sort of thread would be seen by some European players, and then they say stuff to me about it. Or in the end, it was actually European players that ended that streak, which was pretty cool, I guess.
Who ended it?
It was who was it? It was Sims and not Richard Sims.
I
It
was
was
going to say,
no,
surely
no,
not.
no, I wouldn't be caught dead losing to Richard Sims. Nah, it was the OG Sims who was a lot better. He was a really good player, OG Sims. And I think it was I forget his name exactly. I think it was Bobber. Because I think there's another player with a very similar gamer tag, and I had to end up confusing the two. But I
Mm,
think it was like Bobber or something like that was his gamer tag. He was a really solid player as well. He would end up playing with, I think it was either the Bucks or Lethal's team, one of the top two teams in Europe he was on.
mm.
He was a really, yeah, he was a solid player. They ended up beating us to kind of end the streak.
Yeah, damn. I guess like in a way, in terms of it's good to lose to EU, and sort of that might even open you up to the skill level of EU when you're first trying to get into it. But Going away from Halo 2, obviously, unfortunate circumstances didn't lead to you getting your first LAN your under your belt as well. How was Halo 3 for you? Was it after that break in Halo 2, you straight back into Halo 3, going to get back into competing, or what was the sort of natural progression to get back into the scene?
Um, Halo 3 came around, and like, at this point, well, from that point, well, not exactly that point, but around that time, towards the end of Halo 2, I had a lot going wrong in my personal life. I was at school at this point, but like a lot was like really going wrong in terms of like mental health issues and stuff like that, and stuff at home, and it was just I don't want to get into obviously the specifics of it, but a lot was weighing on my shoulders at this point, to the point where gaming and like competing kind of took more of a back seat. I still was interested though. I was still like, okay, Halo 3 is coming out. It looks pretty cool. It's gonna have a lot more financial backing than H2. Everything's gonna be a bit cleaner, a bit more professional. It would be cool, it'd be cool to make a name in this or whatever. Let's just carry this on. Then when Halo 3 actually came out, um, might be a controversial opinion, but I wasn't a fan.
Oh
I wasn't,
shit,
yeah, I wasn't a fan of Halo 3.
Shystie hot take.
Yeah, no, it didn't. It felt like a regression of Halo 2 to me. It didn't feel like an improvement. It felt it felt like there were too many inconsistencies, and it quite mirrors the gap of between Halo 5 and Halo Infinite quite accurately as well, in terms of the individual skill gap has been kind of chipped away at, in so that the team skill gap is far more prominent, and the same thing is obviously true for Halo 5 into Infinite, right? Um,
Yeah.
that's how I felt in Halo 3. I felt like the individual skill gap has taken a back seat. Of course, you could be good at Halo 3 individually. There was a skill gap there. Of course, I'm not saying there wasn't. It felt like, compared to Halo 2, how smooth Halo 2 was, how the button combinations and just the depth of the gunplay in Halo 2 versus Halo 3, where everything felt slow and stiff. There were no button combinations. There were no like things or advantages you could do if you would happen to, just pull them off at the right time, or use them, in a smart way. Everything just felt like, even like the beatdowns or whatever, just felt like, very slow and clunky. The hit reg drove me nuts. The spread of the BR in Halo 3 I could not stand, because I really hate inconsistency in video games, especially if you're competing in them. Like, if some things need to work every time, they can't work some of the time. So when you're
Especially
introducing,
like a BR as well, right? Yeah,
yeah,
like
so
that's
if you're going from the Halo 2 BR, which is like you can
yeah.
bank your life on that, um, to the Halo 3 BR, which has got, you need to suddenly like lead with this thing, and even if you lead, like, you're not guaranteed anything. Like, the spread of the bullets is so much slower that you often have to miss, and so you have to end up give another extra shot or whatever. It just makes the gameplay so much looser and inconsistent than Halo 2, for example, which it just came from. So all of these sort of factors combined made it so I really wasn't that arsed in competing in Halo 3. It felt like, okay, I'm good at this game, but so what? Like, it doesn't mean anything. In Halo 1 and Halo 2, it felt like being good meant something. It felt like individually you could take pride in your performance. But in Halo 3, it didn't at the time, it didn't feel the same. It felt like, yeah, it's the same with Infinite right now. And that's why so many people are frustrated, and some people refuse to even play it. Is that the team aspect of it is taken center stage, because that's pretty much all there is. There's no layer on top, which is the individual skill layer, to create an actual overall deeper experience. There's just mostly the team aspect of it. Now, again, I'm
Yeah.
not saying there's no individual skill in Infinite or Halo 3. Of course there is. It's just the depth of that individual skill is far shallower than something like Halo 2 or Halo 5. Um,
Well, Halo 2 had the BXR. as well. So
Yeah,
you
but that's
beat
what I mean.
down.
It had so many.
Yeah, double shot.
It had double shooting, quad shooting. It had the grenade reload. You could
Yeah.
BXR. You could
Is it short game as
YY.
well? The melee short game to get two beat
Yeah,
melee.
you could
Yeah,
BXB. You
yeah,
could like you could
BXB.
do the other like BYB or whatever. There's a variation of that as well. There was all these other little things as well that just made it tighter. You know what I mean? It just
Yeah,
felt tight. It's kind of like I don't know, like even a game like Apex Legends is like okay, it doesn't have all the like button combinations or that much depth in terms of the skill, but the game just feels tight and responsive. Do
mm,
you know what I mean? Whereas
yeah,
like the Halo Infinite, for example, in comparison, just feels so I don't know, it just feels so like bloated and slow. Even on a high frame rate, it doesn't feel right. It feels like if you play Infinite at 240 FPS and then you go play Apex at 240, it doesn't feel like you're playing both games at 240. It feels like you're playing Infinite at like probably like 80 and Apex is actually 240. There's a strange I don't know what's actually going on behind like behind the engine, but there's a strange clunkiness to it, and that's how I felt in Halo 3 as well. So I didn't that's actually, it's something that I said to some players at the end of Halo 5 or people that are frustrated in Halo Infinite is kind of embrace the change because that was the mistake I didn't make that I did
mm,
make in Halo 3 is that I expected or wanted Halo 2 like Halo 2.2. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
And I got Halo 3. And okay, Halo 3 wasn't what I wanted, but if I was going to be successful in Halo 3, which I wasn't, but if I was, and if I wanted success in it, then I would have to embrace the change. I would have to embrace everything about Halo 3. And the same thing is true for Infinite right now, is you kind of have to embrace what it is. If you actually want to play it, if you want the success in it right now, you have to embrace the change in it. I know there's loads of cheesy properties of it and loads of just like, just not great things, but you have to take the puzzle of like those pieces and make them fit the best way they can. You can't sort of look at it in a sense of like, well, I don't want to do this, or I hate this, so I'm not going to do it, or I just dislike the game, so I'm not going to play it as much, or whatever, or there's the BR's not consistent, or I get blank beatdowns and all this kind of stuff. There's very much like if you want to be successful at the time in the game, you have to embrace it regardless of what it is, and that's the
yeah.
mistake I made in Halo 3 is that I let my like sort of personal dislike for the game or for the changes at least kind of just set the picture. I was like, well, I'm not really gonna bother with this because or I'm not really gonna give it my all at least because it's just not a great, it's not a great sequel in my opinion.
To balance between how much you enjoy the competitive side or how much it is that you play and play even for enjoyment as well. I
Yeah,
guess that for you, Halo 2, you absolutely love the game and you love the competing side, and they sort of like mesh together.
yep,
In Halo 3, I'm sure you still love the competing, but just trying to find that balance where you can still have both and find that enjoyment as well in it. And many people loved Halo 3 as well. Loads of
absolutely.
people and I'm sure there's people out there who love Infinite as well. It depends on the style of player you are. I'd say definitely Halo 3 for a lot of people why they loved it was because it was their first Halo or their
Right.
first
I
sort
was
of
just gonna
foray
say. I was just
into
gonna
it.
say
Yeah.
that was that that kind of doesn't help it as well. That if you're following the pipeline and you're going like Halo 1, Halo 2, and then Halo 3, then Halo 3 is gonna leave a sour taste in your mouth. But if Halo 3 is the first one that you enter at, it's gonna be incredible. You're not gonna know how good it could be previously. It's going to be the best thing ever because like you don't know how good things could be previously or like how good they
Mm.
were. It's kind of like you haven't got the comparison to make to realize it. It's just like okay, this is good. And don't get me wrong, like Halo 3 was a really good game. They did a lot of things right with that game, and in hindsight, I should have taken my advice now and more embraced the game, and I probably would have found more joy with the game on an enjoyment side of things when if I just actually embraced it, because there's points in a game that if you don't play a game for 500 hours, you don't actually kind of get to the sort of there's certain things that like the deeper you get into a game, the more and you can actually enjoy it because there's new things that you learn or little things that you pick up on. Um, or your perspective on the game just changes because of the amount of time that you've put in. But it's like
Yeah,
sometimes
absolutely.
people don't want to actually, they only dip their toes in, and then they like, okay, they make their mind up there and like, yeah, this isn't a good game. But it's like once you get past that barrier, sometimes there's gold waiting at the end. Like the Halo 5 is a good example of that. A lot of people I think put like just have a little experience with Halo 5 or whatever, and it's kind of like, yeah, maybe this isn't Halo, or this isn't necessarily a great game, isn't. But once you start mastering Halo 5, once you start getting in depth with it, understanding everything, and the knowledge starts to accumulate, then there's something extremely special waiting for you at the end of Halo 5. But the problem is like just getting the players to get to that point, when so many are going to just give up early instead.
Yeah, and I guess to sort of piggyback also from you saying marshing the game, there's that side of competitive as well. If you put 2 hours or 10 hours into competing in the game, there's that's nothing compared to 400 hours plus competing alone, especially with how Halo 5, let's say, worked as well. Because you started with AR spawns way back in the early days of competing in Halo 5. Obviously, then you went into your pistols, and there was the radar changed with ground pounds getting rid of it as well. All this stuff adds different elements to the game, and something which when you first start playing, you just see it as like a base, you just run and shooting. Then you suddenly start to get the movement side of things down, that would make the different jumps you can try and make. I'm not saying that I could make any of the jumps. I couldn't. I tried to make like the fathom jump up to top mid, but not for me. And I didn't put many hours in as possible.
Yeah.
But for Halo, if we go back to Halo 3 quickly as well, was there any signs of competing, any sort of esports stuff that you did in general? Do you still keep up with the NA scene? Did you try your hand at any EU stuff?
No, on the EU side of things, no. There was no real interaction there or anything. There, I played a bit, custom games and stuff like that, just casually, I guess. Never really had the intent to actually compete or anything like that. NA side of things, I mean, I kept up with the friends that I made at the time, just to see what they're doing and obviously wish them success and whatever, or if they need help or stuff like that. And just being around those guys, you kind of get, you kind of just it's just you just I don't know, you gain so much knowledge. You just have like these experiences that are just not really predictable. Like for example, the like I was actually there just by chance really, when what was it, the Forge map Onslaught in Halo 3. When that was being made, I was actually there with the MLG tester who was, I think it was called KC at the time, who basically his job was basically to go over the maps, decide what would be in comp, and if they were ready, make sure they were like balanced and there was no exploits and this kind of thing. And
Mm.
he'd go and forge and do all this stuff. And I just happened to be in, like, in Halo 3, just happened to be at the right place at the right time, and just happened to be there while he's doing that. And he's asking me for feedback and asking the other players for feedback on just any changes or this kind of thing. Um,
Was
just
that
just
in person or was that like online? You watched
no,
them doing it?
online, no, online. You'd just be in the
Yeah,
lobby with them, you'd just be in the lobby, and
yeah,
while they're making these decisions, whatever, and just behind the scenes, and it's just interesting, when stuff like that is going on.
yeah. I mean, it's still good to obviously keep that aspect um, alive as well. Even if you're not, you didn't play yourself. Just having your name still in that bubble or it's being talked about, because I'm sure even throughout all of Halo 3, people will still remember Shystie in the back of the head if they competed in Halo 2 as well as like as someone which
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
actually
I
built
got
up.
I got I got messages and stuff, and like people were asking to, are you competing? Do you want a team? This kind of thing, because there's still be matchmaking from time to time, but there was never a real any real intent from my side.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I'll tell you what, this is the best time, right? Um, to do a little quick fire round. So if you talked about your start of your journey, and we've still got your future going into MCC Halo 5, etc. forward as well. But this is an idea just for those listeners at home, which Dave actually pitched to me. So I'm not taking any credit for it as
I
well.
didn't want credit for that one.
Well, it's too late now. It's too late now. It's written down. He didn't tell me what to say.
Go on,
Basically,
go on.
basically this quick fire round. I've got 10 different things, mostly to do with Halo, and I just want you to have like a quick fire answers to them all of them as well. Some of them, I think there's actually two. No, there's one which isn't to do with Halo. I just want the first thing in your head, right? So if I
Okay.
just said like, if all the phrase was just LAN, you just say whatever comes to mind first about it. Right? Okay. Here we go. First one.
Oh, okay.
Ready?
Yep. Yep.
Dollars.
Kind.
Oh, I like that. Oh, that's very caring. That's very yeah.
I mean, if you want me to
Halo.
elaborate on that, no, we can go
No,
next.
no.
We can go next.
Let's
Go
go.
next.
Halo 4.
Ooh, terrible.
Online Warrior.
Don't worry. Kimbo. Sorry.
That's good. That's good. I like it. Get some fuel to fire. Worst connection in Europe.
Ooh. I have to pass on that one. Honestly, I don't know people that have that bad of it. Snaky, maybe. Snaky. There you go.
Okay, right. I don't. Is that really a calling someone out? I don't think it is. Right. Tommy the Krogan.
In depth.
Ooh, I can see that. What's your favourite sport?
Football, I suppose. Yep, football.
Nice. Halo Infinite 2022 World Champion.
Sentinels.
European Legend of Halo.
Jimbo.
Favorite post night out food to get.
Probably pizza.
Wow.
Can I just elaborate on that Kimbo thing? By the way,
Yeah,
it's
go
not.
for
It's
it.
not. When you mean like online warrior, I don't. I mean specifically for me, right? On Halo 5, this dude was the hardest kill for me, and I don't mean because like he's hard to kill, because obviously he is. He's a great player. But Robbie, just for some reason, like his connection and my connection, there's some weird voodoo going on because like my bullets do not reg on this bloke. Like everyone else, like somewhat okay. On this dude, nah. Like for some reason, there's just some force field on this guy, and he just hammers me into the ground. So I end up having to just run most of the time. I don't even bother like shooting this guy anymore.
That's it.
I
Wow.
mean,
I mean,
shout out to Robbie because he's a great guy and he's a great player anyway.
I don't know if you were digging a hole for a bit there. I think you saved it. I think you saved
Is it
it.
saved?
I think so. I mean, hey, we'll let the viewers judge you on that one, Dave, for sure. I mean, that's why I asked those questions. They're quick fire questions. You
Yeah.
got to, yeah, mate. I put you on the spot. Put you on the spot. Blame me. Blame me if anything, as well. Dave, this is all we've got time for, but we're gonna have to do an episode 2. Right? We're gonna have to. I mean, I'd do 7 episodes with the insight which I'm getting from you personally as well. I mean, yeah, we'll definitely have to come back for another one. Another
Yeah,
one of
I'm
these as
down, mate.
well,
I'm down. That's not a problem.
because just speaking to you just brings so much insight and in-depthness, even to like the NA/EU divide and connection back in the early days as well. Is there anything that you want to close on just before we end this first, I guess, episode of a podcast with yourself?
Yeah, I want to get your picks for Orlando, Joe. What's your top 4?
Oh shit! Now you put me on the
That's
spot.
right. That's right.
Okay, Optic, Sentinels, pretty obvious. We're
Yep.
gonna go Phase again. It sounds pretty bland at the moment. E United, E United.
Yeah, I know, but it's still like they're still legitimate
Yeah.
predictions, aren't they? As they're
Yeah.
taken prior.
So those predictions will be after Orlando has been taking place. So straight away, people can call me out if I don't get it right. But I'm sure they'll straight away and be like, I can't believe that Joe Sketch, prior to seeing Orlando, has picked E United to place fourth and they place fourth. Unbelievable scenes. Snipe down on the team, obviously a former, I'd say mate of yours, or former Halo mate of yours at least. I'm going to switch it back to you though, Dave.
Yeah, go on.
Switch it back to you. Who are you going
My
for?
predictions, very similar to yours, I think. I think Optic, Sentinels. I think Optic. I want Sentinels to win, but I think this is Optic's event. I don't know why, but I can just feel it. Like I feel like they fumbled too many times in the past. I think they're going to sort it out this one. So I think Optic first, Sentinel second, C9 third, and then Phase.
Okay, I vibe that. One more question. Best EU placement. Where they place, what team it is.
Sorry, say again.
The best EU placement at Orlando. Who's going to be the best EU placement?
Oh,
European
sorry,
placement.
Orlando.
Who's the team?
Ascend. Yeah, I think it's Navi are looking too inconsistent, and depending on the matchup, that they can be a bit shaky.
Of course, you say
Quadrant,
Navi inconsistent because you call Kimber an online warrior. That's why.
yeah,
That's the
well,
main reason.
nah. Robbie's got love for me. He's not gonna take it personally.
Yeah.
Quadrant are really, they're really good, and I think on land they're even better. I don't think they will outplace Ascend though. I think Quadrant's like their ceiling is top 8 for this event. I think Ascend's is also top 8, but I think they're more likely to actually make it. Because the competition is just stacked.
Okay, I'll rate that. Obviously, again, guys, this is going to come out after Orlando, but we're just having a bit of fun. We're just seeing, as soon as this comes out, you can compare
Exactly.
our chat
See if we're
to
right.
what actually happened as well. And then they'll both say that Joe Sketch was right in the predictions, but you were right about the EU predictions as well. So I agree with the top 8 for Ascend and potentially Quadrant as well.
Yeah.
Dave, that's everything we've got time for in this episode of Capture Mike. But we're going to have you back sooner rather than later for sure for you to get into that second part of your European Halo history as well. Thank you so much, man, for coming along as well. Any closing remarks, any shout outs, anything you want to say before the podcast ends? And also, where can people find you?
You
Twitter
could.
and social media, not just
Yeah,
come to your house.
Yeah, I'm not big on the whole socials and everything, but I mean, you can find me on Twitch at /Shystie6. On Twitter, I haven't changed it yet. It's still under Frugal, which you can ask me about next time.
I will.
Shout outs to Europa Halo in general. They've always been great for the scene. Without them in the scene, even though they get minimal to no support from official means usually, they still do such a huge job keeping the scene active, keeping the scene alive. I think a lot, they're just an unsung hero, and I think a lot of people, really they should appreciate them more, because if Europa was gone, then I think you'd really start to feel the void that was left in their place. And also a shout out to you, Joe, reaching out to invite me on. I appreciate it, bro.
Oh, cheers, man. Oh, that's such a nice little heartfelt shout out at the end of everything as well. I'm going to shout out the listeners, everybody who's watching or listening on Spotify or on YouTube, however you find this podcast. Shout out to all you guys for keeping Europa Halo going as well. And just, any contributions you want, any feedback, you can always send my way. And also recommendations for who you want on next as well. For now, this is all we've got time for on Capture Mike. I've been Joe Sketch, joined by Dave Shystie. Big shout out to you all, and see you in the next one.